Welcome to Outspoken with Regina. I'm Dr. Regina Davis Moss, President and CEO of In Our Own Voice, National Black Women's Reproductive Justice Agenda. And today's episode is called We Know What This Is. Black Women Respond to SCOTUS. Because you know what? We may be angry, but we definitely know that title matters because Black women are not confused at all about what is happening in this country right now. This is not just about one court case or one legal decision. This is and has always been about power. Who has it, who's losing it, whose communities are protected, and whose rights are being treated as negotiable. And that is why this is a reproductive justice issue. Because reproductive justice has never just been about the right to have an abortion. It's not only about bodily autonomy, it's also about democracy, it's about representation, it's about voting rights, and it's about whether communities have the power to shape the conditions of their lives. So today, we're going to be joined by some amazing guests. Amber Sherman, one of the plaintiffs that is challenging Tennessee's congressional map. And we're also going to hear reflections from the NOVA Black Reproductive Justice Summit that we just attended last week in Chicago. But first, let's go to our Creators Corner. There's a conversation with Creators for Change member Preston Mitchum, and then you're going to hear how he's breaking down what the recent SCOTUS decision means legally and politically, but also why this matters beyond the courtroom. So let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to Creators Corner. I'm Dr. Regina Davis Moss, and I am joined by none other than Preston Mitchum. And we just got some really devastating news last week with the SCOTUS decision. There's anger, there's betrayal, all the feelings. And so I want to get in it today with your legal mind, your culture, you kind of approach this from all aspects. But the main thing is just to make sure that people that are out here listening understand what's at stake. So let's just start at the beginning and just tell us in plain language, what does decision mean?
Yeah, plain language is really important here because Louisiana v. Calais is kind of complicated when you really actually read the legal opinion. I mean, in short, all of this is about fair representation, fair voting and representation, and what that means. And in this decision in particular, what the Supreme Court ultimately did was very lightheartedly strike down Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. And for everyone's awareness, I mean, we hear about the Voting Rights Act all the time, preeminent legislation, 1965, really one of the premier civil rights amendments and in bills of our time. And it's really important that folks understand that what it did is essentially attempt to strip a second Black majority district in Louisiana, which is critical because Louisiana is 1/3 Black. So the Black residents of Louisiana already had less representation than what their actual proportion said they should have based on the rules of proportional representation and actually electing your own people. But the Supreme Court said, sorry, we're not going to care about that. We don't want to do that. And it aligned true to form what we knew, 6 conservative justices, 3 progressive justices who voted against it, 6 who voted in favor of it.
Yeah. So what does this mean in terms of obviously we keep hearing about voter suppression. How does something like this weaken our power, our vote, and how does this really get us to that idea of voter suppression?
I think it's a couple different answers to that. So on one hand, voter suppression, in my opinion, is not just institutional. That's how it starts. Right? What are the policies, the systems that are being in place to stop people's access to the ballot box, which we see happen time and again. This does not look the same as the Jim Crow of the yesteryear. This does not look the same as, sicking dogs on Black people. It doesn't look the same as poll taxes and grandfather clause and literacy tests. But we're still discussing Jim Crow type policies, just with a butter knife, right? Not with a sharp kitchen knife anymore. I think on the other hand, so that's what it does. Like, it actually tries to create this lack of unfettered access to the ballot box. They're doing it with the SAVE Act that they're trying to push through, even though they failed, thankfully. But that's one way voter suppression works. Like, what are the policies we can put in place? What are the laws and other mechanisms we can put in place and say, no, you are not going to have access to this ballot? The second thing is, what does it do to people interpersonally and personally? I think if you see all of the things actually happening across the board, you start to say, why even vote?
Right.
What's the point of voting? Because they're just going to strip our vote away anyway. To that, I always say, if they are trying to do that, it is because our voice is so powerful. And they know that when we vote, we do win all the time, and they're afraid of that. And so, again, it's institutional voter suppression, but it also does something to us that leads to disillusionment.
I think that's really important, because people tend to think about, well, if my vote didn't matter. And if you do think about it from an individual aspect, you could believe that, right?
You could.
We have to get to this point where we're realizing, like, your voice is just one of many, and then if we all come together, then a collective vote absolutely matters.
Absolutely.
I want to talk a little bit about the Jim Crow and all these other things. There's going to be a call from CBC this week to businesses to, really put your money where your mouth is, stand behind those people that are supporting a lot of your bottom line in terms of stores. Or what are your thoughts about that? Do you think that's going to be an effective approach right now?
Yeah, I think white supremacy only knows economic power, right? And so I think in order for us to attack that, we have to actually stop buying after businesses and other institutions. Shout out to Vincent Evans and the Congressional Black Caucus.
Yeah.
I think they've been doing some incredible work, and this is an example of that, right? And so for us to really push back on these businesses, we did it with Target, right?
Yeah.
We've seen such a successful effort to boycott Target and strip the money from their hands and really reinvest it in our own communities. I wish I knew another way other than like economic deregulation. But that's just what it is. People respond to that, and Black people spend money.
Yeah.
I really want people to know that there is a cost to hate. There's a cost to homophobia, to racism. Like, businesses literally do worse when they are racist and sexist and homophobic. And I really wish that they knew that, or they cared enough to know that. And I think that what CBC is doing, what other orgs are doing to really push back and say, since you love capitalism so much, we're actually going to subvert this and show you why capitalism actually hurts you too, and it hurts your bottom line. And I think that's one of the very ways we have to respond, is by the dollar.
I'm thinking about my granny who said, if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense.
Literally.
But if it makes dollars, it will make sense.
Cents and cents. And
Right.
Granny knew.
Yes.
Granny knew.
So I know you know reproductive justice. I know you cut your teeth in this. Can you talk a little bit about this from a reproductive justice standpoint? How does it impact voting rights, bodily autonomy, democracy? How does that all work together?
Democracy, voting rights, racial justice, all those things are reproductive justice issues, right? And it's true to all of the tenets, but it's especially true around how do you actually live a life that you deserve to live, in the communities that you deserve to live in, and the families that you deserve to have. For me, when I think about democracy, right, it's always around how are we creating an environment that's rooted in dignity, autonomy, humanity, and you can't get that without voting. Or at the very least, if you are not electing people, if you're being stripped of electing people who can represent your interests, that is directly a reproductive justice issue. If I can't say, actually, this person is going to root for equity and accountability and safety and dignity, and won't have police violence, and won't just root in gentrification and root out Black people and businesses, ultimately, you have to do that by voting. Voting is one tool in the toolbox. I've never said that it's everything, because it can't be everything. It's not designed to be that way. We have to pair that with however much money, again, stripping power through capitalism. We have to actually organize and create activist spaces and our brave spaces for us to speak out on these issues. But all of this is about reproductive justice. And it's deeper than just short voting. But it's what can voting get you that people are trying to take away from you, and how does it impact your bodies? If you have a district attorney and I can't vote to elect a district attorney who will decide on sentencing, that's an RJ issue. If I can't elect a member of Congress, because that's all what we're talking about when we're talking about Voting Rights Act, right? It's directly connected to federal representation. Right. If I can actually vote for someone to be my congressperson who represents my issues, who is pro-abortion, not just pro-choice, but pro-abortion, wants to talk about sex ed, wants to talk about racial justice, doesn't want all the money to go to policing, if I can't vote for that person, that is a direct access and issue to reproductive justice. And I really want everyone to start thinking about voting, democracy, racial justice, equity as repro justice
It's
issues.
all interconnected, yes.
All of it.
So, we can't negate the fact that people are angry, afraid, betrayed. What do you do in this moment right now? What would you tell somebody to do?
Feel their feelings, right? Like, I've come to a point where I cannot lie to people, right? Like, I understand why people feel disillusioned. I understand why they feel hurt, harmed, and abused by the system. And we can't stay there. Right. The joke I used to always make to people when they were like, we're going to sit down voting, whether it's black men, black women. I'm like, no, we're not. Because we don't know how to. Right. Like, you know, we fight for ourselves. Yes. Other people happen to benefit from it. Yep, but we fight for ourselves. And because we know fighting for ourselves gives other people liberation, we do it because of that anyhow. And so for me, I'm always like, okay, why are you still fighting? You have to find joy through a way. So my joy is sushi and crab legs. I'm gonna have that after I commiserate. Like,
you can be both and.
both and.
Yes.
And so that is, it's like what brings you joy, but feel your feelings first. But there's an other side to your feelings. There's an other side to your sadness, and that has to be community. That has to be engagement. That has to be liberation. And that is what keeps me going, because I fully believe we will win. We just have to, unfortunately, you know, this is our moment. You know, and this is one of many moments that are going to lead to something ultimately. But we're fighting for all of these moments together, and so did our ancestors, and so did our parents and grandparents, right? Like, we're not the only people who are in moments. And they fought it, and I feel like it is my duty because of them to keep fighting too.
Yeah. And know that, you know, you may not live to see it, right?
Right. In fact, the world I envision, I know I won't live to see in my lifetime. Like, I want a world that's so radically different and rooted in such radical imagination that I don't even want to be able to see it in this lifetime, because I don't even think we know what that looks like just yet.
Right.
And I think our children and everyone after them deserve just that type of world.
Yeah. So Loretta Ross always makes this comment, and I'm riffing off of this. This is not what she said, but she basically said we're all a part of this chain of freedom, right? And all we have to do is make sure that we don't break the chain at our link.
I love that. That reminds me of the book by Angela Davis, Freedom is a Constant Struggle. Because, you know, freedom, if freedom was easy, we would have gotten it. Right? Like, and that's not to make us feel better about it, but it is to say, like, stay the course, because it is a constant struggle. We're always fighting for new versions of freedom every day. Our version of freedom in 2026 may look different in 2050, right? And it probably should look different because society changed.
We realized what we thought was democracy, we're redefining it, right? I mean, we were so disillusioned. Not that we weren't. But
no, but I get. I mean, it reminds me when I'm at protests, people are like, show me what a democracy looks like. This is what a democracy looks like. I'm like, my version is still different. Like, I understand that this is beautiful, but I'm like, my version is even different than this one. But I get the point still.
Right. Well, okay, last question. What if somebody wants to do something now? What do you tell people to do right now?
You know, use your voice is so cliche, but I do mean that. Like, I really want people to realize the power of their own voice. You know, it's why I push back when people say, like, I'm a voice for the voiceless. And I'm like, no one's voiceless. People may not have been able to experience the power of their voice just yet. People may not have a megaphone or a microphone to amplify their voice, and so that is some of our jobs in our positions that we're in. But everyone has a voice, and I want people to feel safe enough to the extent they can, and brave enough to the extent they can to find it, to use it, and to harness it. Whether it's on social media, whether it's in groups with friends, you know, the reality is be unfun at brunch sometimes. Throw a wrench in there and say, what did y'all do today? Did y'all vote? Right? Did y'all make a voting plan? And my friends, I'm that person. I love to have fun.
You're bringing it down?
You know, and then we turn it up.
Okay.
But my thing is, like, you always should have those moments with your friends. Like, it reminds me why I love my friends and chosen family so much, because we talk about everything people tell us not to talk about. Why sex is important, why we should have a joyful sex life, why we should actually talk about our salaries and how much money we're making, why we're talking about taxes and debt. Like, that to me are real conversations that people are not having because we're afraid of judgment, and I get it, but that is what people can do, is like be the person that says, you know what, let's demystify all of this. If we're struggling, let's struggle together in community, and how do we actually help each other? So find your voice.
Oh, I love that. And you know, just like you said, you're at brunch, right? Sometimes sometimes you might be the only person that is making the difference in that person being informed in their vote.
Yeah, exactly. Like some of my friends don't work in policy,
Right.
so they're like, I didn't even know that was happening, and there are a lot of things they do. I'm like, what y'all do? I don't get it.
Right.
One time we had to have a conversation around, like, can we talk about what we do for a living for real?
Yeah.
Because sometimes with your friends, you may guess it, but you're like, I actually don't know what that means, and I realized that with chosen family, they really do, or at least should, want to know more about our lives.
And they're probably coming to you and saying, well, I'm going to ask you because I know you know.
Absolutely.
So just,
Absolutely.
you know what, everybody out there, make that your responsibility to become more informed so that you can educate your chosen family. And you know what? Our time has come to an end.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you again for all the amazing work you're doing on the Creators for Change Council.
Oh my God, it's been such a great experience. So thank you.
That's going to be it for this segment of the Creators Corner. Make sure you tune in again. Thank you, Preston, for helping us understand the larger stakes of this moment and why voting rights and democracy are deeply connected to reproductive justice. Now, I want to move from the national conversation to what it looks like in real time on the ground. I'm joined now by Amber Sherman, policy organizer, strategist, podcaster, and one of the plaintiffs challenging Tennessee's congressional map. Amber is living this fight in real time. So today we're going to focus on less about the legal theory, which Preston, did an amazing job talking about, and more on impact and what this means for Black communities, for Memphis, and for the political power moving forward. Amber, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Regina.
All right. So now, Preston did a great job of trying to help people understand what was happening at the larger level. For people who are not fully understanding what's happening in Tennessee, can you talk about what this congressional map has meant for Memphis and for Black voters on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge blow to Black voting power here in Memphis and in the state of Tennessee after the Louisiana v. Calais case came down. As Preston was explaining, Tennessee almost broke their neck to get to the state house to call a special session to then remove our one Democratic majority and only Black majority district that we have. So Memphis is a majority Black city, over 65% Black. And we had a congressional district, Congressional District 9, that was then split into 3 different new congressional districts. And they called the special session specifically to break us up and say that Tennessee deserves conservative leadership, a full slate of conservative leadership going to DC and being able to uphold those conservative values, even though Tennessee as a state still has Black people and not everyone is conservative. And also to redraw the maps and dilute the Black voting power for Memphis, you had to redraw the entire map. So they had to redraw pretty much the entire map except for like 2 districts in the far east corner near Knoxville. And so there's people who are in Nashville that are now in a district with people in Memphis. There's folks in Memphis who are now in a district with people in Pulaski, Tennessee, where the Ku Klux Klan was founded. There's folks in District 5 that now covers large rural areas at the top of Tennessee, bordering Kentucky and the city of Memphis. So large groups of people who are also being disenfranchised, because when you dilute Black voting power in Memphis, you're also diluting the voting power of rural communities too, because Tennessee is also very rural. And so no one is getting fair representation with the way the maps have been drawn.
Okay, so what does that look like for some like the everyday person, every day now that this has been withdrawn?
It looks like it's harder for us to get infrastructure investments and, actually be heard by our Congress member. Congress members are, the main goal is for them to pass a budget, but also bring resources back home to their districts. And when you have a district that is so wide that includes parts of Memphis, parts of rural areas, and parts of the richest county in Tennessee, which is Williamson County, we can't assure that Congress member is actually going to listen to the full population of people in the congressional district. They might just pick one subset group of people that they want to listen to, like the ultra rich, and say, well, they're in my district, I'm listening to what they want, and that's the investments that I'm going for. And so it also makes it harder for us to be heard around things that are important to us. Like in Memphis, infrastructure is a huge issue, affordable housing. But in rural areas, they don't have issues with housing. They care about agriculture, and farmers care about being able to keep their farms going because the costs have risen so high. But also in Williamson County, they're focused on zoning changes and, fixing what things are allowed to be built there. So totally different priorities. And it makes it hard for any of those priorities to be met or heard because there's so much happening that a congressman really just can't address.
Right. So you basically have this congressman that's now having to juggle all these priorities and answer to all these different constituencies. I want to talk a little bit about this notion of representation, right? Because there is a visibility, which I would argue is just, it's never been just about having a person that looks like us in the position, right? It has to be also somebody that is going to represent and center our needs and actually be accountable and hear what our needs are. Tell me about what gets lost when communities lose representation.
Yeah, the biggest thing that's getting lost is the voice that we have. I've talked heavily about the need for, people in Memphis and in Tennessee to be represented. Like the feeling of being represented is important. And we shouldn't have, these politicians who are selecting who their voters are going to be. We as voters should be able to select who we want to represent us, that we trust, that we see, as the person who's going to go and get the work done that we need. But we deserve at least that, because these same politicians in Tennessee are the same ones who talk about how, they're so prideful in being able to represent their communities. They ran for office because they want to represent the city they were from. And so why wouldn't you allow us to also have people represent us that we chose, that we have pride in, that we're excited about? And I think that's what's most important, is that like people, it'll be a growing apathy there, because people won't feel like they're being represented or getting able to, choose their representation themselves. And so they're not going to vote as much. They're not going to show up. They're not going to, really put effort in like they used to, because they don't feel like it matters. And the maps have been drawn in a way that makes them feel like they're powerless. It's not true, but they're still going to have that emotion. And so that's really what we're fighting up against, is like the built up apathy that's happening here. And also just, the feelings of folks who want to be represented having that taken from them, because that's traumatic.
Yeah, I love how you talked about feeling powerless, because Preston kind of alluded to that earlier when he talked about how these decisions can make you feel disconnected from the political process and powerless. But for you, I think this is really deeply personal. What made you decide you were going to do something personally that was going to contribute to addressing this fight?
Because I'm being affected. I'm a lifelong Memphian. I've lived here my entire life. I've lived in my community my entire life. I know the people here, and we talk about things like what our Congress member is doing, what our local reps are doing. And so it's important to me that we just don't sit idly by and let people dilute our votes, is that we should be also fighting back. And I'm willing to be the person to do that, because I know how important it is for people to see that we are fighting back. I think that people do become more apathetic when they think that people have just given up. And I don't want anyone to think that I've given up. I think it's important. I think that Memphis is important enough to fight for. And that's what I'm willing to do. And I think that we all should be willing to do that for the places that we live and we love.
Yeah. And of course, you are no stranger to the fight. You have been in the courthouse, viral a lot of moments. But I just wonder, in this particular experience, has anything taught you something? Have you been taught something different about how power actually works now? Because we're talking to people that are like, wow, there's a new definition. We're having to redefine democracy now.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of the most important lessons that I've really been able to kind of put into practice, is like being able to see, one, for me, being able to see how they surgically removed and cut people out of districts lets me know that, one, race is definitely a factor. They knew exactly what they were doing. There are specific cities where the only people who have been cut out of a district are the Black and brown populations that live in majority Black and brown neighborhoods. Only those neighborhoods were surgically cut out. And I think seeing that showed me how much they're afraid of the power that Black and brown voters have, because Memphis is a strong voting bloc, so much so they had to split it into 3 different congressional districts to attempt to break it up. But even with that, we're still not powerless, because there's so many people who aren't counted in those same maps that they're using. They're not considering the voters who have never voted before, because they don't feel like people are reaching out to them. They're not considering the millennials who don't necessarily have a, very long track record of voting, but if asked, they will vote. They don't consider the people who are just turning 18 are going to vote for the first time. They're counting on populations who they feel like are the ones they can put into different districts and then keep those numbers stacked up against us. But they're not realizing that Black folks, are more than just a map. There are more of us here than are going to be shown on any kind of website or map that they're using to, surgically put us in these different districts. And I think that that's what I'm most excited about, is being able to engage those people who, are now in rural areas. There are folks in Black rural areas. I went to school in a rural area. And so I know that there's a lot of Black folks in those areas who are never engaged. And I'm excited about being able to engage those people who have said they're excited to vote in a new congressional district that has more Black people in it, because the district they were in didn't have any. And so they're excited about the possible opportunity to actually get some kind of representation for themselves. And I think that that presents a really good opportunity, because all of these districts have become very competitive now. The idea that they thought, they would flip this one district is not realistic. All these districts are extremely competitive because the way they had to surgically cut them up made at least 4 districts competitive, because they were so sold on being racist, they are willing to risk 4 congressional seats to get one.
And I think just forgot that how critical Memphis is to the civil rights movement. I mean, it is the bedrock for a lot of things. So, definitely kind of didn't think that through. So people that are not in Tennessee, they're watching it. They may have their own opinions. What do you want people who are outside of Tennessee to understand about what's happening, or may misunderstand what's happening?
I think the biggest thing is that this is an ongoing assault on Memphians and our sovereignty that has been happening for years. And this past year, it really picked up after the occupation that started here. We were one of the first cities that had thousands of federal agents and National Guard troops that are still currently here now occupying our city. It started with that occupation. And then it started with, after that, senators putting out bills to target our district attorney, trying to get him removed, saying that he's not following the laws, and constantly getting tossed out. The investigations are constantly getting tossed out because he's not doing anything wrong. But they don't feel like he's being tough on crime enough, because they feel like everyone that gets arrested should just be stuck in jail. Everyone should be in jail, and that's how we're going to decrease crime. And they have continued to attack him. And after attacking him, they attacked our school board. They passed a bill to take over our school board, which is the largest school district in the state of Tennessee, and put an advisory board in place. And that advisory board will then take over the role of the school board and hire and fire the superintendent, and can approve contracts over $50,000, which is an elected role that our school board members were elected into. So they have continue to assault Memphis and try to take away our sovereignty and our autonomy over and over and over again. And then they passed this redistricting bill. So this wasn't just one thing that just happened. This is the 5th thing that's happened after they've been, pushing over and over again for tough on crime bills, for attacking our DA, for bringing this occupation here. And then this redistricting happens. And so I think it's important that folks also have that context, that this is a all out assault on our city. And we're a city that's majority Black, like I said before, but also one of the biggest economic engines in the state. They want to be able to take that power from us. And so they really try to chip away at it as much as possible.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting when cities like that are actually contributing to a lot of the economy of the state. But then, governors are actually happy to take that money. But then, we have these situations like this, which is, like you said, this has been ongoing. This is coordinated. It's not just a one-off, and people definitely need to understand that this is intentional, and they are not going to stop there. This is a total power grab. I want to think kind of about, you talked a little bit about what the community is, how they're responding, but I think we also have to name that we're wrestling with a lot right now, and this is not easy work, right? This can be exhausting. Yeah. People are feeling overwhelmed by the courts, by attacks on voting rights, by the constant, as you said, political crisis. But at the same time, communities are still organizing. So if there are other people that are living in other communities that are feeling overwhelmed or discouraged, what do you want them to understand about this moment?
I mean, I think the biggest thing to understand is that, like, a lot of us knew that this was coming, and there's no way we can fight back against it if we're all burnt out, or we're having health problems, or, things are just, out of control in our own lives. And so I think it's more important to, like, sit with the moment, take some time, recognize what's happening, and then put together a game plan of how you're going to respond, which is what we did. We already had a rapid response plan in place here. As an organizer, I had already organized the folks who were going to be showing up at the Capitol. We had organized direct actions. We had folks calling different legislators. We had policy issues that were happening at the same time, and we had folks pushing on those same things. And then we had a game plan for what was going to happen afterwards. And I do think it can be very overwhelming. And I always encourage people to like step back. You can always delegate something to somebody else, but I do think that we should fight. I do think it's important to always fight and push back, because sometimes them seeing the pushback is a nail in the coffin. When you look at what happened in Mississippi and what happened in South Carolina, they were feeling that pressure and they backed back. Even with folks pressuring them to call special sessions to redistrict, they were still like, okay, we're not going to do this. And so I do think that it's important that we are fighting back. And if it does happen, if they do, pass new maps where you are, figuring out a game plan for how you're going to respond to that. But I always recommend people taking a step back to analyze what's happening and, really recognize their feelings around it first before jumping straight in.
How often are you taking a step back?
I do it like here and there, like a few weekends out of, like usually a weekend out of the month.
Okay. All right. That's fair. Right. But I asked that question because, everybody needs to understand they have to do what's right for you. Now, obviously you're in a crisis moment. You can't afford to take a lot of time off, but you do have to have those moments of rest so that you are fortified and ready to get back into the fight. I also talked about how you are a podcaster, you're definitely prolific online. And, there's this notion around showing a lot of solidarity in social media, right? And that's helpful. We also need people to do a little bit more than that. So what would you say solidarity looks like for you beyond social media?
That's a good question. I think one of the main things is helping to organize a phone bank. If you're near Tennessee, coming down to knock doors to make sure folks know that their congressional district has changed. There's 1.4 million people who are now in a new congressional district, and most of them don't know, because part of the bills that they passed also said that they don't have to notify anybody. They removed. The only thing an election commission has to do is put on their website that the districts have changed, but that's only if they have a website. There's no backup plan if the election commission doesn't have a website. So rural areas don't usually have election commission websites. And so there's millions, almost 2 million voters who don't know that they're in a new district now, and they don't have to let them know. And so we're really doing a huge education campaign around that, around helping folks know to go check their, congressional district on this website. You can go to sos.tn.gov to double check to make sure you know what district you're in, because even though people's precincts didn't change, so your voting location doesn't change, who you can vote for probably did. And it's important to go ahead and know that so you can make a plan to vote, instead of getting to the polls and then be like, oh, I don't know, what that is. I don't know, who those people are. And you just don't vote at all, because a lot of folks do that because they worry about making the wrong decision. So they just skip it. And we don't want folks to skip it. We want them to make sure that they actually do, double check, make a plan, know who's running in the district they're in, and be prepared to vote for someone. And so that's one of the biggest things. If people are posting online, I'm telling folks, post that information. But if you want to come down in person, that would really be great, because we're really going to be knocking thousands of doors to let folks know, hey, you're in a new congressional district. You need to make sure you double check that.
And you'll be doing that, and for how long? And just give people who are not familiar and following like that, what is your time span for all of that work?
We're going to be starting in like the second week of June, leading up to early voting. Early voting for the August 6th election starts the second week of July. Early voting usually starts on my birthday or the day after my birthday. It's like always around my birthday. It's very interesting for August elections.
Great.
So it's usually it's my birthday activity. And then in November, there's a November election as well, the general election. Folks will also need to get out to vote for that. So we'll be doing canvassing for the first election and the second one.
All right. So you gave people a lot of stuff they could be doing right now.
And you can also phone bank inactive voters. So if folks are on Mobilize, you can go to Civic TN's Mobilize page and phone bank. There's about 700,000 inactive voters that we're calling to let them know they need to go and change their information, because usually if you're inactive, it's because you are in a new address or new phone number, and you need to update that info so that they're not purged from the voting system. And you can do that any day. We have the phone bank set up to start at 9 a.m. and it ends at 9 p.m. So you can go on Mobilize, sign up, and you just get on the Get Through app on your computer or your phone, and you just call through that list.
Mhm. And they don't have to let you know you're inactive, right?
They don't
Or
have
do
to
they?
let anybody, yeah, they don't let anyone know they're inactive.
Mm, okay.
It's not a requirement. So, and I think that's also a bigger call for folks who are doing advocacy, really
Mhm.
pushing these election commissions to do more because
Yeah.
they don't have to contact voters. And so they don't. And the only time people are getting contacted is when someone's running for office or when like a nonprofit or advocacy or reaches out to them about an election or to remind them to check their status. And so if you're not a consistent voter, you probably won't get contacted by a candidate. And if you're an inactive voter, you probably won't get contacted by nonprofits. So that's why we're really pivoting with the Civic Table, which is all C3 organizations. We're really pivoting to pushing folks to pay attention to inactive voters because those are people who probably would vote if you asked them to, but because no one contacts them, they just don't.
Right. I mean, that's what we talk about a lot, right? Don't wait until right before election before you come talking to me about these issues, you know? I mean, and listen, everyone needs to understand that they are changing the game. And so we've got to be educated before, we've got to be talking to, you know, our circle, our close circle, but definitely 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people outside of that. I mean, they wouldn't be working so hard to take this away from us if it wasn't important to them. I want to
Yeah.
end, like I always do in these conversations, on a little bit more of a positive. What is giving you hope despite all of this that's going on?
There's a lot of artists announcing their concerts, and I got Kaylani tickets this morning for like 150 floor seats. So I was very excited about that because everybody's in love with Kaylani now that she got all these hit songs. And PJ Morton is also going on tour, so I'm excited about
All
that. And
right.
he's dropping a new album. So that's the thing that
In the
mostly gives me
variety
hope
in
is,
your
yeah,
music genre. Okay. Yes.
I do have
Okay.
a big variety. But the thing that gives me the most hope is usually music, especially new music or like concerts, events, stuff like that. Also, it's the summer and there's a concert series here in Memphis to do a free concert series. So I'm excited for that because one of the artists coming is Big Crit and T-Pain. So I get to see both of those at this free series that normally I would have to pay for, which I really appreciate that they, even throw that. So that's one of my biggest things.
Yeah, and I think we cannot forget the power of music, right? Music has always been
Yeah.
a very important part in movement work. Think about some of the songs in the civil rights movement, right? The point of it was, you engage with it, it makes you feel something, then you open up to the lyrics and you learn, right? I mean, some of it made us feel proud. Some of it educated us. Some of us taught us about injustice. And so I think that's great that you are doing that. And just, I think I'm also want to, make an appeal to artists and know that you have a voice and you have a role to play in this moment too. Amber, thank you so much for being here, helping
You're
us to
welcome.
ground this conversation in lived reality, not just the headlines and not just what we see on social media. And before we close, tell people where they can follow you and support your work.
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram and TikTok at AS for Afro. And like the link on the screen says, my website is ambersherman.com. So if folks have any questions, you can always reach out there. I also have like an organizing one-on-one tab on my website that has resources around organizing for folks who are just getting into it, want to see like things that they could read to learn about how do you organize in your community. All that's there too.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Amber. We will see you in Memphis. Now, what Amber just shared reminds us that these conversations are not just abstract. Last week, we were at NOVA, that's the first Black RJ Summit, and that was in Chicago, and we were asking organizers, we were asking advocates, we were asking community members what this moment feels like for them and what people need to understand right now. So let's listen to what they had to say. There, it's Regina from Outspoken. And this month, we are in Chicago at the NOVA Summit. While we're here in Chicago, we wanted to hear directly from the people in the room. We asked them, what is this moment revealing to you? This moment demands action. We just heard about the recent SCOTUS decision, and we're feeling all the things. We're feeling confused, Hi, we are having some technical difficulties. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. We're working on this right now. It's Regina from Outspoken. And this month, we are in Chicago at the Nova Summit. While we're here in Chicago, we wanted to hear directly from the people in the room. We asked them, what is this moment revealing to you? This moment demands action. We just heard about the recent SCOTUS decision, and we're feeling all the things. We're feeling confused, angry, betrayal, deja vu. So you're going to hear their reactions. You're going to hear their analysis, the memories, their warnings, and all their calls to actions. Let's hear what they have to say.
My name is Omishade Bernie Scott. I am a storyteller. My pronouns are she and her.
My name is Alana Bell. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a community organizer from Cleveland, Ohio.
My name is Kashia Knight. I am the
All right, folks, please stand by. We're working on it. Technical difficulties. Maybe it's just someone out there that doesn't want us to say what we have to say, but we will not be silenced. So stay with us. It's Regina from Outspoken. And this month, from Outspoken. And this month, we are in Chicago at the Nova Summit. While we're here in Chicago, we wanted to hear directly from the people in the room. We asked them, what is this moment revealing to you? This moment demands action. We just heard about the recent SCOTUS decision, and we're feeling all the things. We're feeling confused, angry, betrayal, deja vu. So you're going to hear their reactions. You're going to hear their analysis, the memories, their warnings, and all their calls to actions. Let's hear what they have to say.
My name is Omishade Bernie Scott. I am a storyteller. My pronouns are she and her.
My name is Alana Bell. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a community organizer from Cleveland, Ohio.
My name is Kashia Knight. I am the founder and ED of Auntie Guided Community Care and Support. My pronouns are she, her, and alien black girl.
My name is Dr. John Higgins. I am an educator and writer, also a digital creator. I work full-time for RPYA, which is located in Southern California.
My name is Markia Thomas. I am an anti-capitalist, and my pronouns are she, her.
My name is Kimberly Robinson. I am the community liaison and policy analyst with Black Women for Wellness and Black Women for Wellness Action Project, and my pronouns are she, her.
My name is Tambra Morrison. I am the founder of Ain't I RJ. I am a Black woman. I am a mother, a Black mother, because there's a difference. I am in this fight for liberation. My pronouns are she, her.
I wish my parents were alive to have this conversation with them.
First thing I felt, honestly, was angry.
I thought to myself, my God, they at it again.
Anger, frustration was another feeling, and then I felt empowered to motivate my community, my family.
First thing I felt was heartbroken. I was raised by people that lived in the Jim Crow South. Just being a student of liberation, I know how hard they fought.
My parents were both born in Jim Crow South. When my younger sister and I were born, we were supposed to be the first generation that was not going to be an issue for. And so here we are now. And I have a 34-year-old son, and I have a 17-year-old son. And I think a lot about what conversations my parents would have with my boys, what they would think about this time that we're in.
People need to understand is our rights are being stripped away.
I really think people are missing the severity of the impact of this moment.
I think what folks are missing about the impact of this moment is how intentional it is. They're working collectively to dismantle the rights and the access that we have in order to advocate for ourselves.
When we talk about the impact of this decision, the Civil Rights Act being dismantled, because that's exactly what they're doing, right? I don't think people realize that in the South, racism doesn't wear a mask. It's always in our face. Even with all the strides we have made, it's always in our face.
How their government sees them, and how their government values their body, and how the government values their voices, right?
People don't get what this looks like in the South.
Decisions like these are made, to me, it's a direct attack against my existence or my ability of choice, right? And so I think people are missing that decisions like these nick away at our ability to choose. And once we lose that ability to choose, well, history shows, what happens when things are decided for us.
Folks are truly missing that it's not just impacting and affecting Black people. I think what we've seen happen to the trans community in the last few years is setting the stage for something bigger. I think what we're seeing happen to Black people around this SCOTUS decision is leading to something bigger.
Also, what I think people need to understand is that this is not the end. This is just the beginning of a fight that we are going to be up against.
We should be paying attention to how the South is organizing.
I really want people to be more intentional and active in their lives.
It's really important right now that we educate our communities, that we mobilize, and we get out and let our voices be heard, loud, and proud.
As Black people in this country, we got a lot on the line, right? But in the South, we're gathering immediately at the capitals in our states. You have to pay attention to the urgency in which our organizing is happening, like the urgency behind our organizing. But not only just pay attention to the South, implement what the South is doing.
We need to remember that we need new architects looking at things with fresh eyes.
Being intentional about your survival.
If this ecosystem is going to evolve, because it has to, then we need good architects and cartographers to make that happen. Yeah.
In this moment, Black women deserve peace.
Black women deserve to be listened to.
In this moment, Black women deserve to be held, to be seen in our full humanity. In this moment, Black women deserve the opportunity to elect people who know us.
Black women deserve it all, honestly.
In this moment, Black women deserve respect.
In this moment, Black women deserve autonomy.
Black women are strategists. They deserve to be thought of as strategists and folks who really understand what's happening in this moment, and they deserve to be fully given the attention that they deserve.
Black women deserve mutual aid.
I think we deserve to be told, you are an unreliable narrator to no one. You are reliable. I believe you. You are the expert of your experience. You are the expert of your body. I trust you.
And we also deserve to have a say with what is going on in this country today.
All right, you heard it. You just heard exactly why this conversation matters, because the stakes are not theoretical. They are about dignity, they are about safety, they are about representation, and whether communities have the power to shape their own futures. And Black women understand exactly what is happening in this moment. Now, unfortunately, we're coming to a close, and I want to just say, we know this is bigger than one court decision. If you were going to take anything away from this conversation, it is that. This is about whether democracy actually works for all of us. It's about who gets represented, whose communities are protected, and whether people have the freedom and the power to make decisions about their lives, their families, and their futures. This is why voting rights, fair representation, and reproductive justice are all connected. What we heard today is that people are not giving up. They are organizing, they're paying attention, they are telling the truth about what is happening, and most important, they are fighting back. So our charge is for you to do the same. Stay engaged. Support the people doing this work if you can't do it yourself, if you're not ready. Pay attention to what's happening in your state and refuse the idea that this is inevitable. We've been here before, and we've fought these fights before, because we know what this is, and we know what it will take to fight back. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, stay grounded, stay present, and most of all, stay outspoken.